इस दुनिया में एक रिश्ता ऐसा है जिसमें कि दो अजनबी बिल्कुल स्ट्रेंजर्स आपस में मिलते हैं और दुनिया का खूबसूरत तरीन रिश्ता बना सकते हैं, घर बना सकते हैं, ये दुनिया बना सकते हैं। लेकिन एक वक्त ऐसा भी आता है कुछ रिश्तों में जबकि ये खूबसूरत तरीन रिश्ता एक नाइटमेयर बन जाता है, यानी कि ये खूबसूरत तरीन शादी का रिश्ता एक भयानक तरीन डिवोर्स में एंड होता है। द वर्ड इज हाई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट डिवोर्स। और इस पे बात करने के लिए आज की हमारी मेहमान जो हमारे साथ स्टूडियोज में मौजूद हैं, शी इज़ अ हाई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट डिवोर्स अटर्नी, फैमिली लॉ प्रैक्टिस करती हैं। आप इस वक्त देख रहे हैं इंटरनेशनल आर्ट सोसाइटी का पॉडकास्ट टी एंड टॉक। मेरा नाम है लीना शाह। ऑफ कोर्स आई हैव टू गिव क्रेडिट टू द डायरेक्टर ऑफ द शो सोहेल नवाज इज बिहाइंड द कैमरा मेकिंग श्योर कि आपको 3 कैमरों से हम लोग के 3 एंगल्स दिखाई दें और सुनाई भी दें। एंड ऑल्सो गिविंग अस ऑल द डायरेक्शन इज द प्रोड्यूसर फॉर द शो एज वेल, बासित जलीली। सो इंटरनेशनल आर्ट सोसाइटी के प्लेटफॉर्म पे डिफरेंट किस्म के पॉडकास्ट आप देख सकते हैं। डोंट फॉरगेट टू लाइक, कमेंट एंड शेयर एट द सेम टाइम। आज के शो में बड़ी धुआंधार डिस्कशन होने वाली है। शायद वो आपको धुआं दिखाई ना दे क्योंकि वो धुआं जो है वो दिलों से उठ रहा होता है। विदाउट एनी फर्दर अडू, लेट मी इंट्रोड्यूस today's guest is Yasmin Kutty. Yasmin, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, Lena. Thank you for having me. I'm a family law attorney doing high conflict divorces. My law firm is KGK Family Law PLLC. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Of course, such a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure this is going to appeal to a lot more people who are missing that pleasure of matrimony or marital bliss in life. But before we dive into that, let me also tell you one more thing about Yasmin. She's also a TikToker. So that's called Desi Girl Attorney.
That's right.
So अगर आप TikTok पे हैं तो उनको TikTok पे भी ज़रूर follow कीजिएगा. Love her videos and you get a lot of advice, not only for divorce but also how to look after yourself, especially in our community. And you know, most of our listeners are from the Desi community, mostly here expats here in the US. जो ओल्डर जनरेशन है, जो फर्स्ट जनरेशन एशियंस हैं यहाँ, पाकिस्तानीज यहाँ पे आए, इंडियंस यहाँ पे आए, वो तो डिवोर्स का सोच ही नहीं सकते, राइट? और अगर डिवोर्स हो भी तो वो ऐसे होती है कि किसी को पता ना चले. द यंगर जनरेशन मे बी हैज़ मोर गट्स टू एक्चुअली से कि आई एम नॉट हैप्पी इन दिस, आई वांट टू गेट आउट ऑफ दिस. सो टेल अस व्हाट स्टैट्स डू यू हैव व्हेन इट कम्स टू के कितने डिवोर्सेस होते हैं, कौन सी जनरेशन है जो ज़्यादा कहती है कि भाई अब तो ये चल नहीं रहा तो इसमें से निकल जाएं, and do you have any stats on that?
I do. That's a great question, Lena. I would say first off that just generally across the board in the United States, it's about 50-50. 50% of all marriages across the board end in divorce. When you compare, when you compare that to like Pakistan or India, where the divorce rate is 1%, that is a huge contrast. However, I agree with you. There are a lot of immigrants now who've come from India and Pakistan into the United States, and maybe second generation or even some of the older folks out there who've been here for a long time that want to get divorced. There are more and more Desi people feeling like they may be at a point where they want to file for divorce.
Right.
So that gives you any context with statistics.
Wow. So you said 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So यानी कि एक पुरानी कहावत है हमारे कल्चर में कि शादी एक जुआ है, you know, it's like a gamble. So उसमें भी 50-50 chance होता है, you either you win or you lose. So it has come exactly to that point that, but people keep on marrying again and again. I'm not going to ask that question, but I'm like thinking, why? Because you know it's going to end.
Actually, that's a great question. You know, first of all, divorce is a very difficult thing to contemplate and execute. However, I think at the core, humans want companionship. And so absolutely, you may get a divorce, and yes, you may consider wanting to remarry again. There is nothing wrong with that, and people shouldn't beat themselves up about that, because we do want companionship, whether it's through a partner, a spouse, family members, whoever. You know, people do remarry. And in fact, men actually turn around and remarry faster than women do after divorce. But it is, just going back to your first question, more and more Desi people are actually making it to divorce court and filing for divorce.
Wow. So a couple of things that you said there, and I picked up on it. First of all, divorce is very hard to contemplate and execute. We're going to dive deeper on that. And I started off with, you know, when I talk about, when I was introducing you, I said high conflict divorce attorney. ये divorce wars जो हैं, that means it's not just a war, it's really like a high conflict situation. So much is at stake, and all of that, so much is not emotions. dive a little deeper into that कि high conflict का मतलब क्या, कब कौन सा point ऐसा आता है when you can tell that this is a high conflict divorce and ये amicably हुई हुई है?
There's probably 2 or 3 factors that play into a divorce being high conflict. I would say first is infidelity. If somebody steps out of the confines of the marriage to have an affair, that creates a high conflict divorce.
Oh, wow.
I would say second, if there is a family business that is involved or businesses that are very successful and lucrative, creates a high conflict case. And third, children. If parties are fighting over and it's a custody battle, those are all the ingredients that go into a high conflict divorce. So, and I will say this, a little background about me. I'm board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization, and I have a lot of experience litigating cases. However, that all being said, 95% of all divorces do settle at mediation and are not litigated in court. But there are those that are high conflict that end up being tried in a court of law.
Wow. So 3 things you mentioned. Number 1 is that there is, one of them has had an affair. Number 2 is there is a lot of money involved, property, businesses. Yes. And third is children. And stats, अगर हम हमारी देसी community के stats देखें, तो most probably all of these 3 ingredients are involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, because we are entrepreneur community, businesses हैं. लेकिन ऐसी situation में, of course, जब हम बात करते हैं, to contemplate a divorce and then to execute it, women, I say now, are picking up that pace that they are at par with men when it comes to businesses and being a professional and understanding law and understanding how the world works. But majority of the women do not know anything. उनको business कैसे चलाना है, negotiate कैसे करना है, उनको तो ये सारी कोई बात पता ही नहीं होती, right?
That's correct.
What do you see in your practice?
I see, well, there are definitely more women in across the board, whether from India, Pakistan, that are professionals, they're dentists, doctors, engineers, but even in those circumstances, I find a lot of times the women tend to defer all the finances to their spouse, and which is fine if somebody's in charge. However, I think it's really important that there's financial transparency and that women especially know, what does the tax return look like? What do the bank account statements look like? How much debt do we have? How many assets do we have? Do we own property, land, whatever that is? You need to educate yourself and know what that is. Both parties should sit down together and before they even file for divorce and have that financial transparency, and that's often missing. I think probably higher stats are, it's missing for women. And part of my job, if a woman hires me, is to collect that data and get that information and empower them, educate them, so they can make decisions on how they want their divorce to shake out.
So someone who's watching this, okay, and they do not plan to get a divorce. They're happy in their marriage. Maybe they're getting married. Maybe their kids are getting married. And they are thinking that, of course, women do not have, majority of the women do not have like eyes on the finances. Who is to blame here, usually, what you have seen in the practice? Is it because the men are concealing it, or is it because women are not as proactive and are not participating in this?
I actually think it's equal. I think that the male spouses should be open and transparent and try to have discussions. But I think women also sometimes are busy, bogged down, maybe having the kids, raising the kids. Maybe there's some division of power and labor in the marriage, which is fine. But I think husbands and wives should get together, or somebody getting engaged should get together and sit down and say, let's look at our tax returns. How much debt do we have? What's in our retirement? What's in our savings? Where is everything? What are the login and passwords to everything? Both sides are responsible for opening up a dialogue and discussion to know what's going on with the household finances.
Wow. So for someone who does not have that information,
yes,
it's your job to collect the data.
Correct.
And जो आपके clients, I know you cannot name your clients here, but of the cases that you have seen, when that data is presented to those women, do you see surprise and shock and like, oh my God, I didn't know all this was there?
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. I've seen situations where we collect the data and the wife is maybe really disappointed that there isn't a lot of savings, that they live off the books and there's a lot of cash and they've paid for a house and cars, but there's no savings, there's no retirement. In other situations where they're pleasantly surprised, oh my goodness, we have 5 businesses, we own 3 houses, we've got acres of land in North Texas, and those are great because then we can try to figure out how to divide the estate in a way that helps the non-earning spouse survive after the divorce. And equally, it works. It's not just a man or woman thing. It's both people and exchanging that information and trying to have a way to divide up the estate.
Mm-hmm. So you brought it up that many times women are not, मुझे लगता है कि हमारे यहाँ की ख़वातीन जो है, and this comes from, I've seen this with my nani and with other women in my family, that they are like, I've never done anything. Even when they do have a degree, I have never worked. I have raised the family. I've put the family together. And if I decide to initiate this because it's become completely unbearable right now, तो मेरा क्या होगा? मैं क्या करूँगी? मैं किधर जाऊँगी? And you use the word that non-earning spouse can survive if it is divided in a way that both of them are supported. Do you see that that empowers women, this knowledge and this information about the finances at the house, to make this decision and actually go forward with the divorce? Or do you see that it's like they're still in a limbo, okay, I don't have the confidence to do it?
To be honest, I think it works both ways. I think that oftentimes when we can get the financial information, and sometimes I tell clients, if you're thinking about filing for divorce, don't file immediately, plan for it. Gather some information, get a copy of the tax return, pick up bank statements lying around the house, figure out what's going on. I think if you've been married for a long time and there's a sizable estate and we start gathering the information and they find out we have some assets, that gives a feeling of confidence and comfort to the non-earning spouse about, oh, I can do this. We can get divorced and I will survive after this divorce. And deciding, maybe it's better to take the retirement account and let the earning spouse have the house because it's very expensive to keep a house, pay the property taxes, et cetera, et cetera. And so we help give some guidance, on how to do that and how to structure settlements.
So in 2026, in this day and age, divorce is not just, okay, we're not happy together, we can't stay together, we'll just, part our ways. There's so much that needs to be parted. And like you said, that especially if they've been living together for a long time. What is your advice to people right now, men and women both, who are thinking maybe it's time for a divorce, they're not sure? When does one go to an attorney? When you get ideas about it? When you have decided, पानी जब सर से गुजर गया तब जाएं attorney के पास? Yeah, would you recommend कि even before you get married, you talk to an attorney, talk about a prenup, talk about कि ये अगर ये नहीं चलता है तो ये किस तरीके से होगा?
So for the first part of your question on the issue of deciding whether or not you want to actually get a divorce, the first issue is the relationship itself failing? The actual friendship, relationship that you have with your spouse. Forget about the kids, forget about the finances. Are you happy in the marriage? Mm-hmm. And if you're extremely unhappy, mm-hmm. then there's nothing wrong with consulting with a lawyer mm-hmm. and getting the legal information, and maybe you decide you don't want to move forward, you want to go to a marriage counselor and try to make it work out. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But if you feel like you're at the end of your rope and you can't go on any further, then yeah, meet with an attorney and get some information and maybe plan. There's no emergency. You can take your time, gather information, and make an educated decision. And I know in our culture, we consult our family members, our parents, siblings, aunts, uncles. It is a community kind of decision sometimes in our culture to make that decision. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Bring your relatives, come in and seek out a legal help and get some information. Maybe you'll decide, I want to make this work out. I don't want to file for divorce. Maybe you decide, yes, I want to move forward. It's a difficult decision either way. Mm-hmm. And on the issue of if you're young, if you have assets, I would say if you have any assets over $250,000 and you're marrying somebody who also has some assets, maybe you think about getting a premarital agreement. But if neither of you have anything and you're starting out young, there's probably no need for a premarital agreement. But if this is a second marriage or you have assets, maybe you do want to consult a lawyer about getting a premarital agreement before you get married.
Right, because I have seen a lot of younger generation. I know this very young couple, in their early 20s, and they got married and they have just started their careers and they do not have like a financial backing or businesses from their families, or they haven't built any. They are both professionals, but they couldn't even afford to go to an attorney. So they wrote a prenup using ChatGPT within themselves that, this is how it's going to work out if things don't work out. And I'm like, wow, usually like from where we coming from, लोग तो ये सोचते हैं कि जब तक के पानी सर से ना गुजर जाए इसके बारे में सोचना भी अच्छी बात नहीं है. Your clients, you see a lot of desi clients. Do you think that mindset has changed?
Yes, I do. Actually, I have more and more people coming in that are desi or from Pakistan, India, in the Middle East that will come in and want to have a premarital agreement. I've got couples who are, somebody's just finishing their residency, they're a physician, maybe the other person's a dentist, they have a dental practice, they're smart, they understand, maybe they've been here for a while, they want to protect their assets. And I would highly recommend not using ChatGPT to do a prenup, because if it's not...
Please, look at the camera and say that again.
If you're in Texas, they do honor premarital agreements. They need to be executed prior to the marriage and ratified 30 days after the wedding. And each person needs to come in and have a lawyer look at the documents and negotiate the contract for the prenup properly. Otherwise, you can, what I call, bust a prenup, and you don't want that to happen. So if you're really thinking about doing it, you need to really consult a lawyer. Try not to do it online or on your own. If you mess up, it's not going to be enforceable.
So you mentioned like law here in Texas. Tell us how the law here in Texas differs from other states, and also how does it, benefit maybe one of the parties?
In my opinion, in Texas, I think that the divorce laws favor the earning spouse. I think they don't favor the non-earning spouse, and I think primarily because there really isn't any alimony. Very, very few people qualify for post-divorce maintenance. So if you're a 30-year marriage, you've never worked, and your husband or wife makes all the money, and you're filing for divorce, you're just looking at dividing up the estate in half, in essence. I don't like saying 50-50, but in essence it is basically 50-50. And then you would be lucky, depending on your circumstances, if you get some additional post-divorce maintenance, because there is no alimony here. In other states, they look at the longevity of the marriage, what each party makes. Child support's not restrictive. You can walk away with a decent amount of assets and actually have money that comes in every month to support you if you're the non-earning spouse. If that answers your question, Lena.
Yes, it does. So I do feel that, and living in this country, I have seen that, from the women's side, there is always like, these are people who have gone through divorce, and they're like, कि हमेशा इतना fight करना पड़ता है, you have to give so much money to the attorney, उसके बाद अगर, even if you're not going to trial, there's like so much that happens before that, और उसके लिए इतना लड़ना पड़ता है. In the end, it's like men are very vicious and they can find out ways to go around it. Or जो my male friends who have gotten divorced, and they're like, oh, this system here in the US is completely, वो सारा woman को favor करता है, सब कुछ उसको दे देते हैं. अब मैं इतना थोड़ा सा earn करता हूँ, family के लिए enough था, अब मैं wife को कैसे दूँ, और उसको मुझे alimony भी देना है, और बच्चों का भी करना है, और मुझे तो अब 3 jobs करने पड़ेंगे. But now I don't have a wife at home who's cooking and cleaning, so I have to do that too. What's your opinion on that?
It's true. I mean,
all of it is true.
Yeah, it doesn't. Across the board, when you get divorced, it is a step down socioeconomically. Absolutely. Wow. However, does that mean that you cannot survive and move on from that? Absolutely, you can recover. Especially if you're the earning spouse, you will absolutely recover. It may take a year or two to start being able to put money back in your 401k, buy property, maybe get remarried. But yes, it is a reality check for both sides. You're going to have to budget. You're going to be having less money, and you're going to have to work within that to survive post-divorce. Except for the few top 1% earners, you are going to have a step down socioeconomically when you file for divorce. But for a lot of people, that's their freedom. They can't take another day in the marriage. They're very unhappy. Maybe there's long-term abuse. Maybe there's long-term infidelity, and they just can't do it a single day further. So to answer your question.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. I think this was the most important part of the podcast, because I do feel then that means that people need to be very mindful when they're getting into it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a very big deal, very big decision to make. I'll say 2 things. One is that you can actually do non-adversarial divorces, which are called collaborative divorces, where parties agree to work it out jointly. Each side has a lawyer, you meet, you file with the court what's called a collaborative divorce process, participation agreement, and you have a joint expert, you go through and you exchange all the documents, you reach a decision outside the courthouse, nobody gets any wind of your airing dirty laundry, and you can actually settle your case that way. It only works if both parties can kind of cooperate together. And in the cases where it is high conflict and there is a lot of going to court, and the best thing you can do is cooperate, get the documents, get everything exchanged, decrease the cost of what you're going to spend on your divorce to reach a settlement. Because there's only a few ways to settle the case at the end of the day. You can either cooperate or be stubborn, and it drags out and it costs a lot of money.
So when you say a lot of money, in your experience, how much has one of the most expensive divorces costed in terms of, paying
Lawyers?
the attorneys? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so across the board, if I look back at my career, I would say high conflict cases that end up getting tried in court. If it's a bench trial, each side could easily spend up to $75,000, $80,000.
Wow.
If it's a jury trial, double it for each side.
Oh, wow.
And so usually most people going into those trials have the assets and the liquidity to be able to pay for those kinds of things. And like I said before, a lot of cases settle outside of court, especially when we sit down and give the numbers to the client. They're like, we'll compromise and we'll figure this out. Let's get it settled.
Right.
So if you're not going to go to court and have a trial, and you're looking at spending somewhere between, say, $10,000 to $30,000 over the course of a year, maybe each side, to get it done.
Right.
And the thing that drives up the cost of the case actually is the discovery, where you collect all the financial information. Clients just don't understand. When they say they're asking for 7 years worth of tax returns or 7 years worth of bank statements, you have better download it and send it to your lawyer, because you're going to get taken to court and the judge is going to order you to do it. So you might as well just cooperate right off the top and get the information over to the other side.
Right. High conflict में बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग भी आते हैं who become vindictive.
Yes.
As a result of what has happened to them. Maybe it really did happen. Maybe they imagined it. But the fact is that they are feeling that way. One of the partners is feeling vindictive, or maybe it's both of them that are feeling that way. What's the worst that you have seen? If you can share like a few cases. I know you cannot tell names, but if you can share a few references, and what, in your opinion, could have avoided it going like completely haywire?
Well, I think that infidelity is a really, really, it's a high conflict divorce. It is usually, especially if it's a surprise. So depending on—
What do you mean a surprise?
Like the spouse finds out that the other spouse is cheating and then turns around and files for divorce because they're devastated that this person stepped outside the marriage. Those are really hard cases. If it's, for example, if it's the husband that is cheating and it's the wife that files for divorce, and then there's children involved, and then all of a sudden in Texas, dad's going to get visitation, and the girlfriend is going to be able to see the kids too. I mean, that is hard, really hard, especially in Desi communities, for a Desi mom to think that her spouse, who is now stepping out with some other woman while the divorce is going on, and the children are possibly going to be, depending on their age, could possibly be around that third party. It's really hard. It's very hard.
Right.
And I think it's very hard for a Desi husband to find out their wife is cheating, and then that woman is now with another man and around the children. It makes for a very difficult high conflict case, So that's probably the most common situation.
Is there any way to avoid this, or like—
No, but I think that going to counseling, going in to see a therapist, talking it out, being open with your lawyer, crying, letting it out, having family support helps get through it's very, very difficult, I think, in my opinion. So
wow, you have talked about infidelity. I do know कि अभी हम prenup की बात कर रहे थे. There is an infidelity clause as well. Tell our viewers a little bit about that, because अभी I feel that especially for people around me, like prenup, a lot of people say नहीं यार क्या करना है यार, शादी में जाते हुए prenup का क्यों सोचेंगे? Why are we going to think about breaking it apart when we are trying to come together? यही बड़ा मुश्किल होता है. And then putting in the infidelity clause when you're like all lovey-dovey and you have this promise में मैं किसी और को नहीं देखूंगा, मैं किसी और से बात नहीं करूंगी. What does it mean?
So first off, a premarital agreement can be negotiated in lots of different ways and structured, and you can have different kinds of clauses where, depending on how long you stay in the marriage, you get X amount of dollars if you're the non-earning spouse. So if you stay in the marriage for 5 years, you'll get $100,000. If you stay in the marriage for 7 years, you'll get this much or this much.
So if two people are going into a marriage, I just want you to clarify this. Two people are going into a marriage, उनमें से एक काम करता है और एक जो है is gonna be the support partner in the house. So जो non-earning spouse है वो prenup में already लिखवा सकते हैं कि अगर ये शादी 5 साल चलती है और उसके बाद खत्म होती है तो I am entitled to this much amount of money.
Okay. You have to negotiate this.
Okay.
And both sides have to agree. So all these things in a prenup have to be negotiated and agreed to. But once agreed to, yes, you can put that in. And as far as an infidelity clause, that would say you're entitled to this, this, or this. However, if the earning spouse, for example, finds out that the non-earning spouse is cheating and they can confirm it, they waive any kind of award from the divorce, or vice versa. You know, and you can structure, negotiate. All kinds of different scenarios in that. And you know, I would say usually people it's more common for second marriages for people to get prenups because usually at that point you're older, you have some money.
You've learned.
And you've learned, and you have a higher probability, unfortunately, of getting divorced if it's a second or third marriage.
Oh, wow.
But yes, you can negotiate these things, and it's a contract, and everybody has to agree. And if someone doesn't agree, then maybe you need to think about whether you want to move forward with getting married to that person.
Oh,
you know, depending on what you're negotiating.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yasmin Kutty, in our studios today, a high conflict divorce attorney practicing family law. You have seen so many of these cases in your life. Especially जब आपने अभी यहाँ पर prenup की बात की कि you know ये आपका attorney को लेके जाएं और आपस में बात करें. So talking about a prenup, you ended with saying कि अगर आप prenup sign करना चाह रहे हैं और आपका साथ वाला जो partner है वो sign नहीं करना चाह रहा है, then you need to really think about it. How does this idea or this phenomenon of a prenup affect relationships in our Desi community? Does it bring them together? You think there are situations where if you have seen, you know, pull them apart as well? They just decided not to go ahead with it or something?
No, usually most people that make their way into my office for a premarital agreement have made the decision, had a discussion, and both people are on board. Sometimes things can go south if somebody's asking for more than the other or it's unrealistic. It can cause some problems while we're negotiating the terms. But usually when people come in the door, they've already had the discussion and they're in agreement. The most common couples that have prenups are either young couples that have assets already in advance of the marriage, or somebody who's a way high earning spouse marrying somebody who has next to nothing. And usually the next to nothing person, the fiance, understands if they want to marry this person, they're going to have to sign and execute an ironclad prenup. And I usually find that everybody has kind of an educated understanding of what they're going into. I have not run into situations where I feel that it's unconscionable. Most of these people understand what's at stake, and the non-earning spouse, fiance, can just decide, okay, well, I don't have to sign this. And if I'm going to sign it, well, this is the terms that I have to agree to.
Okay. So for our Desi community, people who are watching this right now, because I learned about prenup from Tom Cruise. You know, that's because that's, you know, their prenup became like tabloid news, and then I'm like, prenup kya hota hai? Then there's, of course, you know, then we started hearing about postnup as well. But people who are listening in about to get married, या फिर ऐसे लोग इसको देख रहे हैं शो को जिनके बच्चे शायद या इनकी फैमिली में कोई शादी कर रहा है, do you recommend prenup to couples? And why?
I recommend premarital agreements for young couples engaged. I recommend a premarital agreement only if each couple has access to assets that are more than $250,000. So if your father runs companies and you're going to inherit, or you have an ownership stake in a bunch of businesses, you're going to want a prenup before you get married. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
If you have nothing and your fiance has nothing and you're both, say, physicians, it is fine to get married and not have a prenup because you're going to earn the money together as you're married. But I think for people who have some assets before marriage, they need to think about getting a premarital agreement. I also think that people, if there's an inequity, so usually people who are coming in with a lot of assets and one person doesn't and the other does, are other people that find their way into my office for a premarital agreement. It's very important that each party have counsel. They need to both have lawyers to advise them and guide them through the process.
Right, right. Why is that important?
Because in Texas, if you enter into a premarital agreement and at the time of divorce, say the non-earning spouse argues they were forced into it, coerced into it, and it's unconscionable, and they never had a guidance of a lawyer, that's a high probability that you can, what I call, bust the prenup. And you don't want that to happen. You want an enforceable premarital agreement.
Okay.
I also want to say, we talked a little bit about infidelity, Lena, and I want to just say that actually I find that the number one reason for divorce is not infidelity. It's actually financial. I think most people get divorced over financial problems. So, but I think that infidelity can cause high conflict divorces.
Okay, fantastic. Yasmin Kutty at the KGK Family Law Firm.
Yes.
Right here in the studios with us. Thank you, Yasmin, for being with us. Tell us a little bit about your law firm and about your partners and how you got here.
So I've been in practice for over 13 years. I've practiced law for over 30. I am board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in family law. My law partner, Denise, has a lot of experience with international cases. She was an associate at Laura Dale's office, Jenkins Kamen. She's very experienced also. We've had a partnership for over a year. I've practiced for many, many, many years, and we do high conflict divorces. We also promote collaborative divorces, which are non-adversarial divorces that do not require mudslinging and going to court. So there's lots of options here. You don't have to go in with guns blazing. You can also try to do a non-adversarial divorce. Please visit us at www.kgkfamilylaw.com. and see me as Desi Girl Attorney on TikTok.
Right, that's pretty cool. I love the Desi Girl Attorney, especially because all the advice that you share there. I know that a lot of young people, I was talking to this girl the other day and she says she does follow you and she does listen to your advice. I do feel after listening to everything that you said there that we do need to educate our younger generation, especially what can happen, because when you're that young, you do not maybe see the possibility or the probability of anything like that happen. But we learn things like these do happen. Thanks for being with us. How did you like our studios? Because you are a TikToker as well, so you're familiar with the industry. So what do you think about IAS and the studios and our team here?
So I think it's fabulous.
Thank you.
You guys have a great studio. It's a great organization. It's extremely professional, and you're so welcoming and make it so easy to do these. I'm happy to ever come back anytime you want as a guest.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank everybody here for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, Yasmin. And with this, आज के हमारे STN Talk का वक्त खत्म होता है. अगले podcast में आपसे मुलाकात होगी. मेरा नाम है लीना शाह. Special thanks to the director, of course, Suhail Nawaz, who's making sure that our frames look absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And special thanks, खास शुक्रिया हमारे producer Basit Jalili का, who's always guiding me on asking questions. And International Art Society का ये platform YouTube पर, Facebook पर, TikTok पर, Instagram पे हर जगह आप देख सकते हैं, like कर सकते हैं, comment कर सकते हैं, share कर सकते हैं. Till next episode, take care and bye.